Fleet Commander Raz Cologne of the Dravak Armada, stood on the observation deck, his 6 eyes fixed on the human colony below. The settlement was nothing more than a scattering of domes and tubular structures across the barren surface. His mandibles clicked with disdain as he addressed his officers. So this is the legendary human expansion? This pathetic arrangement of domes and tubes? For decades we have avoided open conflict with these creatures, and for what? They are nothing. His voice rasped with the authority of a Devastation elite, sharp and grating like metal on stone. Lieutenant Vex Morith adjusted her tactical visor, uneasy. Commander, intelligence reports confirm this is only an outpost colony. Population is just over 2,000. They call it New Hope. Raz Cologne barked out a laugh that rattled the deck plating. New Hope? Let us show them how quickly hope dies. Prepare the assault teams. I want boots on the ground in 20 minutes. The bridge erupted with motion as warriors rushed to their stations. This would be conquest number 374 for the Empire. Routine, inevitable. Tactical Officer Brower stepped forward with a data tablet. Scans complete, Commander. Defenses are negligible. No energy shields, no orbital weapons platforms. Security personnel appear to be armed with primitive projectiles only. Excellent, Raz Cologne replied, his eyes glittering. We will take the colony intact. I want prisoners. Earth must have stronger defenses elsewhere, and we will find them. Lieutenant Morith hesitated, her tone careful. Commander, the intelligence briefing warned against direct engagement with humans. Caution might be. Raz Cologne's voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. Are you questioning my judgment, Lieutenant? No, Commander, she said quickly, bowing her head. They are soft creatures, Raz Cologne continued. No claws, no natural armor, no strength to speak of. Their only advantage is technology, and this settlement clearly has little of that. This will take an hour at most. Then the Empire will claim its first human territory, and my brilliance will be proven before the High Command. Nearby, Tactical Officer Rex Muller allowed his facial plates to shift into what passed for a smile. The warriors are eager. Some have wagers on how quickly the colony will fall. And what was your wager, officer? Raz Cologne asked. 30 minutes. The commander gave another grinding laugh. I say 15. Commence landing sequence. In New Hope's Operations Center, Security Chief Penny Avery nearly spilled her coffee when the proximity alarms shrieked to life. What the hell? She muttered, spinning toward the monitoring station where her colleague Tommy Okonkwo was frantically running scans. Multiple unidentified vessels, he said evenly, though his hands shook on the console. Big ones. They're entering the atmosphere, and they're not answering hails. Penny shoved her mug aside and pulled up defense protocols. New Hope was a research and agricultural outpost, the farthest colony from Earth and the least prepared for war. 23 security personnel, including herself, armed with little more than rifles meant for local predators. Get Director Takahashi on comms, she ordered. And initiate Protocol 0, Tommy froze. 0, are you sure? Look at those energy signatures, Penny snapped, pointing at the screens. Those aren't traitors. Do it. As he complied, Penny opened a colony-wide channel. Her voice carried calm authority, but inside she felt the weight of dread. Attention, all New Hope residents. This is Security Chief Avery. Multiple unidentified vessels are entering our airspace. This is not a drill. Civilians, proceed to your designated shelters immediately. All security personnel report for duty. Protocol 0 is in effect. Her eyes locked on the massive shapes breaking through the atmosphere. Whoever they were, they weren't here in peace. Humanity's first true contact with another intelligent species was about to become a nightmare. From the lead Dravasian dropship, Strike Leader Gorks Thol surveyed the human settlement through tactical scanners. His squad, battle-hardened veterans of a dozen campaigns, stood ready behind him. Remember, Commander Raz Cologne wants prisoners, he growled over the comm. Use stun weapons unless resistance is overwhelming. The youngest of his unit, Mevlana, asked, Do you expect resistance, Strike Leader? Gorks laughed, a harsh bark inside his helmet. From these frail creatures, unlikely. Intelligence says they are physically inferior in every way. Their adaptability and technology are their only weapons, and this colony has neither. The dropship jolted as it touched down, one of 12 surrounding the settlement in perfect formation. The deployment ramp hissed open. For the Empire, Gorks roared, leading his warriors onto the dust-choked surface. Their combat suits compensated for the thin air as they advanced toward the nearest dome. But something gnawed at him. The silence. Where were the screams, the chaos, the panicked civilians? The colony lay still. Too still. Strike leader, Mevlana reported. No movement detected inside the structures, but scans confirmed nearly 2,000 life signs just minutes ago. They must be underground, another soldier suggested. Spread out. Search for entrances, Gorks ordered, moving toward the central command dome. The doors slid open automatically at his approach. He hesitated, wary of a trap, then stepped inside. The command center was deserted. Displays flickered, systems active, but not a soul in sight. Something was wrong. Very wrong. The command center still flickered with life. Displays scrolled with data. Chairs sat pushed back as if their occupants had left in a rush. And a cup of steaming liquid remained abandoned on a console. Strike leader Gorks Thul scanned the room, unease prickling across his scales. They knew we were coming, he thought grimly. But how? And where have they gone? He moved toward the central station, studying the strange human symbols etched across glowing screens. One display caught his attention, a countdown timer steadily ticking downward. Strike leader, came Commander Raz Cologne's rasping voice over the general frequency. Status report. The settlement appears deserted, Gorks replied. No resistance, no inhabitants. Possibly underground shelters. They cannot have evacuated, Raz Cologne snarled. Our ships detected no launches. Find them. Yes, Commander. Still staring at the timer, Gorks summoned his youngest warrior. Mevlana, interpret this. She stepped closer, eyes narrowing as she parsed the alien script. Their common tongue. This reads as, a countdown. Less than 5 of our minutes remain. To what I cannot say. The unease deepened. Gorks ordered her to query the other strike teams. They reported the same findings. No contact, no signs of subterranean access, only empty structures. While Mevlana relayed the messages, Gorks explored further, his instincts screaming. At the communication station, another message glowed across the main display. He beckoned Mevlana again. She leaned in and read aloud. Thank you for activating Protocol 0. Countdown initiated. Please evacuate to a minimum safe distance of 500 kilometers. Have a nice day. A chill pierced Gorks's armored hide. He transmitted to the flagship at once. On the bridge above, Commander Raz Cologne bristled with frustration. What do you mean, no humans? They must be somewhere. All strike teams report identical findings, the communications officer confirmed. No evacuation traces. It's as if they vanished. Lieutenant Vex Morith spoke carefully. Commander, I advise recalling the troops until we understand what we are facing. Nonsense. They are hiding. An urgent communication cut across the channel. Gorks Thul's voice, strained but steady. Commander, we've discovered a countdown and a message advising evacuation beyond 500 kilometers. I recommend immediate withdrawal. Based on a human bluff? Raz Cologne scoffed. Commander, Vex interjected again. Sensors are detecting unusual energy readings across the settlement. They are building. Before Raz could respond, Tactical Officer Brower stiffened at his console. Multiple launches detected. Concealed silos around the colony perimeter. Dozens of small vessels vectoring outward. Destroy them, Raz ordered. They're not heading toward us, Brower corrected, voice rising. They're leaving the planet. Commander, we must withdraw, Vex urged. Raz's mandibles clicked furiously. We are Dravak. We do not retreat at the first sign of the unexpected. Alarm shrieked across the bridge. Energy readings at critical levels, the sensor officer cried. Signature resembles. Fusion cores seconds before detonation. For the first time, Raz Cologne felt the icy bite of fear. Recall the ground forces now. The countdown has reached 0, Brower whispered. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the viewport exploded with light as the entire settlement erupted in perfectly synchronized detonations. 12 Dravation dropships vanished in the firestorm. But the destruction didn't end there. The chain reaction spread outward through underground conduits, igniting every power line and substructure in a vast, controlled detonation. New Hope had been rigged as a trap by the Ancients, whispered Zetarek, an observer stationed in orbit. The command channel dissolved into chaos, and then the real nightmare began. The automated vessels that had launched seconds before the blast were accelerating toward the Dravasian. Zetarek's eyes widened as the tiny drones struck 3 warships almost simultaneously. On impact, they unleashed the same annihilating energy that had consumed the colony. One capital ship vanished in a white flash. Another split in two, its midsection vaporized. The third lost power instantly, drifting dead and broken. Form defensive screens. Raz Cologne roared. Target those human craft. But the drones were too many, too fast, too precise. For every one destroyed, 3 more found their targets. Z-Tarek's own vessel shuddered as something slammed into its shields, alarms howling. The tactical display showed the proud Dravak armada, 12 capital ships and their escorts, being ripped apart piece by what amounted to automated suicide drones. "This is impossible," whispered his second-in-command, pale with disbelief.
How could the humans prepare this?
"They had no warning," Z-Tarek began to understand. "They didn't build this trap for us," he muttered, voice tight with realization. This was their plan all along. Protocol 0. If they can't defend a colony, they make sure no one else can claim it either. The bridge shuddered violently as another impact strained the corvette's failing shields. Z steadied himself and barked the order. "Prepare for emergency jump. We must warn the Empire." "But Commander Raz Cologne has not ordered a retreat," his second-in-command protested. Z stabbed a claw toward the tactical display. Raz Cologne's flagship drifted lifelessly, its engines extinguished, surrounded by the shredded debris of what had once been thousands of Devastation warriors. His voice was grim. "I don't think the commander will be giving any more orders." 6 minutes and 43 seconds after the first Devastation dropship touched down on Epsilon Eridani 4, Z-Tarek's battered vessel made the jump to safety. It was the only ship of the invasion force to escape. Behind them, the battlefield was nothing but fire and fragments, scattered across the void. Far across the system, in the fortified observation post known as Hope's Shadow, Penny Avery stood before a wall of monitors. She watched in silence as her home, the colony of New Hope, burned itself into extinction. Beside her, Director Takahashi's expression remained stoic, though his hands trembled faintly at his sides. "Protocol 0 executed successfully," reported Tommy Okonkwo from his console. "Hostiles neutralized. 76% of automated drones reached their targets." "And our people?" Takahashi asked quietly. 100% evacuation confirmed," Tommy replied. Relief softened his voice. "All escape pods launched cleanly and are en route to the rendezvous point. Every colonist accounted for." Penny exhaled slowly, a weight lifting from her chest. "So we lost everything except what matters most." Takahashi gave a firm nod. "Structures can be rebuilt. Our people cannot." "One hostile vessel escaped," Tommy added. "Corvette class. Jumped before our drones could intercept." "Good," Takahashi said, surprising both Penny and Tommy. "Sir?" Penny asked, confused. "We need someone left alive to explain," Takahashi replied, a thin smile forming. "To tell their masters what happens when they attack humanity's weakest colony." Tommy glanced at his chronometer. "Total engagement time, 7 minutes, 12 seconds. Penny gave a short, humorless laugh. 7 minutes. Probably the shortest war in human history. "Not a war," Takahashi corrected. "A lesson. And given the technology we just witnessed, that lesson will spread quickly." On the monitors, the last of the firestorms faded into the void. Alien wreckage mingled with the shattered remains of New Hope, slowly drifting apart into an ever-widening graveyard. Protocol 0 had worked exactly as intended. The self-destruct contingency woven into every colony since humanity's first brush with hostile contact 50 years before. "Begin transmissions. To Earth Command," Takahashi ordered, "and prepare the backup colony modules. Once it's safe, we rebuild. In the same place?" Penny asked. "In the same place," Takahashi confirmed. "But this time we'll have something we didn't before." "What's that?" He let the faintest hint of satisfaction creep into his smile. "A reputation. Across the galaxy, the Grand War Chamber of the Devastation Empire was silent, as High Admiral Drav Zoran studied Fleet Observer Z-Tarek, with all 6 eyes narrowed to slits. "Let me understand," the Admiral said at last, his voice dangerously soft. "Commander Raz Cologne took our most advanced battle group to subjugate a minor human colony. And in less than 8 minutes we lost 11 capital ships, 12 troop carriers, and over 7,000 warriors." Z-Tarek stood rigid at attention. "Yes, High Admiral. 7 minutes, 12 seconds from landing to annihilation. My vessel escaped with minimal damage. 9% casualties." Admiral Pexvalak leaned forward, his mandibles clicking. "You claim the humans had no warships, no defenses, only this." Protocol Zero? Correct, Admiral. They sacrificed their entire colony to ensure our destruction. A wave of uneasy murmurs rippled through the chamber. To the Devastation warrior culture, the idea of abandoning territory was unthinkable. The Empire had been built on conquest and control. To see an enemy obliterate their own world defied every tenet of Dravak pride. These humans are either mad, growled Admiral Krav Zentle, or operating on a logic we do not comprehend. To destroy your own colony rather than surrender it. What possible value is there in such madness? Deterrence, Drav Zoran replied coldly. They have proven that even their weakest settlements cannot be conquered without unbearable cost. Pexvalak slammed a claw against the table. The Empire does not bow to intimidation. We have lost fleets before. Not like this, Zoran snapped. Never in our history has an entire battle group been wiped out in minutes by a civilian outpost. He turned his gaze back to Zatarik. Did you recover any data of value? Some, Z admitted. Their evacuation was astonishingly efficient. They cleared the colony in under 3 minutes. Their infrastructure was pre-wired for self-destruction, and the drones were little more than fusion charges on guidance systems. Primitive, yet devastatingly effective. Most concerning of all, their communication suggested Protocol Zero is standard procedure for all human colonies. The chamber fell into heavy silence as the implication settled in. If every human outpost could become a death trap, then the cost of conquering them would be ruinous. Drav Zoran rose, towering over the gathered admirals. Withdraw all scouts from human-controlled space. Effective immediately, no vessel is to engage them without direct authorization from Imperial Command. His mandibles clicked once, a sound like the snapping of bone. He turned to Zatarik. For bringing us this intelligence, you are promoted to Fleet Commander. Do not thank me. Survive long enough to deserve it. The chamber at Devastation High Command had fallen into a heavy silence. High Admiral Draz Zoran's mandibles clicked faintly, a sound that might have been amusement or warning. Your first assignment, he said at last, his voice low and edged with menace, is to establish diplomatic contact with these humans. We will study them, understand them before we decide our next move. Aftermath at Phoenix Hope. 6 months after the battle that wasn't a battle, the colony of Phoenix Hope stood where New Hope had once burned. The settlement mirrored its predecessor almost exactly. Domes connecting corridors and communal squares, but at its heart stood something new, a towering metallic obelisk. Director Akira Takahashi placed his hand against the cool surface as colonists gathered around him. Penny Avery and Tomio Kanwo stood nearby with the security detail, eyes scanning the crowd. Today, Takahashi began, his voice carrying across the plaza, we dedicate this monument not to mourn what was lost, for only structures fell here, but to remember what we proved. In 7 minutes and 12 seconds, the people of New Hope demonstrated humanity's greatest strength, adaptability. The crowd stirred, a mix of pride and unease on their faces. 6 months earlier, they had incinerated their own home to deny an enemy a foothold, and yet they had returned to rebuild on the same ground. Some say it was unwise to come back here, Takahashi continued, that we should abandon dangerous ground. But retreat is not our way. We learn, we adapt, we prepare. A soft hum filled the plaza as the obelisk activated. A holographic display shimmered into being, listing the names of every soul who had lived through what history now called the 7-Minute War. Our greatest achievement, Takahashi said, his tone quieter now, was not the destruction we unleashed, but the message we sent. Humanity may be smaller, weaker, less advanced, but we will not bow. We will not be broken, and we are ready. Before he could say more, Penny felt a whisper at her ear from a communications officer. She moved swiftly to Takahashi's side, murmured something, and stepped back. Takahashi's face remained unreadable as he addressed the colonists again. Citizens of Phoenix Hope, he declared, a Dravatian diplomatic, the Dravatian approach. Fleet Commander Zatarik sat uneasily aboard the descending diplomatic shuttle. Through the viewport, he saw the rebuilt colony, nearly identical to the one his people had tried to seize, right down to the dome configurations. Only the central obelisk was new. Beside him, Ambassador Trelvok sifted through cultural briefings. Fascinating, the ambassador muttered. Physically frail, yet their ingenuity in contingency planning is extraordinary. Zatarik gave a low, skeptical growl. Extraordinary? They wired their own colony to self-destruct. Exactly, Trelvox replied, his faceplates shifting in what passed for a shrug. That willingness unsettles our strategists more than any fleet of warships. They value survival of their people above all else, even above territory. A mindset we cannot afford to dismiss. And what would you call that? Sitarik asked. Pragmatism, Trelvox said simply. And something else, admiration. Do you know the name of their rebuilt settlement? Sitarik shook his head. Phoenix Hope. A phoenix in their mythology is a bird that burns itself to ash only to rise again, renewed. Poetic, don't you think? Sitarik had been too consumed with the military implications to see it that way. To him, humans were a species for whom self-destruction was just another tool of war. The shuttle touched down. Outside, a human delegation waited. Among them, Sitarik recognized a face from intercepted transmissions, Director Takahashi himself. Remember, Trelvox murmured as the ramp descended. Imperial Command has authorized significant concessions. Our task is to secure a non-aggression pact. The Empire is not cowed, Commander, merely educated. Sitarik said nothing, though bitterness gnawed at him. That a campaign meant to be a simple conquest had reduced the Empire's pride to diplomacy was a humiliation in itself. First Diplomatic Contact Director Takahashi stepped forward, flanked by Penny Avery, whose hand hovered close to her sidearm. Her posture was casual, but the message was clear. Humans had not forgotten. Welcome to Phoenix Hope, Takahashi said in clear, measured tones. I am Akira Takahashi, administrator of this colony. The Devastation ambassador inclined his head, responding in surprisingly fluent English. I am Trelvox of the Imperial Diplomatic Corps. On behalf of the Empire, I thank you for agreeing to meet. We prefer peace where it is possible, Takahashi replied. Please join us. As the delegations moved through the colony, Sitarik noticed how his security detail scanned every building, every conduit, every shadow. They were searching for the hidden mechanisms of Protocol Zero. The humans did not bother to reassure them. Let them wonder. Inside the conference chamber, a circular table designed to place all parties on equal footing, the talks began. The Devastation Empire wishes to acknowledge the misunderstanding of 6 months past, Trelvox said carefully. Commander Raz Cologne acted without proper authorization. Attempted authorization, Penny muttered under her breath. Takahashi's expression did not shift. Your clarification is noted. But tell me, Ambassador, what does proper authorization for such actions look like in your empire? Trelvox hesitated. The Imperial Command has revised its policies in light of recent events. We propose a formal boundary between our territories, with protocols for communication and dispute resolution. In other words, Takahashi said evenly, you no longer intend to conquer our colonies. Our priorities have shifted, the ambassador replied smoothly. Sitarik leaned forward, his 6 eyes fixed on the humans. What the ambassador means is this. The Empire now respects the lengths to which you will go to defend your sovereignty. We acknowledge your determination, though we still find your methods unconventional. Penny broke her silence. Is that why you came back? Because you respect us? Sitarik's gaze lingered on her. We returned because you taught us the most important lesson any military can learn. Know your enemy before you engage. Takahashi seized the moment. Then let us agree, we need not be enemies. Earth has no desire to expand into Devastation space. We only seek to protect our people and explore unclaimed systems in peace. Trelvox inclined his head. That is compatible with Imperial interests. We propose a treaty, a neutral zone, and a framework for dialogue. The negotiations stretched on for hours. Yet for the first time since humanity had stepped into the wider galaxy, it was clear. They were no longer seen as prey. They were recognized as a force that even empires would think twice before crossing. The negotiations stretched late into the day, covering spatial boundaries, communication protocols, and trade possibilities. Throughout it all, Penny noticed something unusual. The Devastation delegation regarded the humans with a peculiar mix of respect and apprehension, like diplomats addressing highly intelligent bombs that might detonate at any moment. When the talks concluded, Director Takahashi invited the visitors to tour Phoenix Hope. Ambassador Trelvox accepted warmly, while Commander Z. Turk agreed with visible reluctance. As the group moved through hydroponics bays and research facilities, Penny found herself walking alongside Z-Turk, slightly apart from the others. "You were there," she said quietly. The Dravation's scales shifted in discomfort. "I observed from orbit. I did not take part in the ground assault. But yes, I saw. You saw what happened. I saw your colony turn itself into a weapon," he admitted. "I saw comrades die in fire and vacuum. I saw tactics no Dravation commander had ever prepared for." Penny's voice was calm. "Protocol Zero was always a last resort. We never wanted to use it. Yet you were prepared. That's humanity in a nutshell, Commander. We pray for peace but prepare for war." They walked in silence for several moments before Z-Turk spoke again. "The Empire has studied your kind extensively since our encounter. Your history is violent. You have fought each other endlessly." Penny inclined her head. "True. And in doing so, we were forced to develop both aggressive and defensive technologies at a pace most species never imagined. We've had to prepare for every form of attack because somewhere in our history, other humans already tried it." Z-Turk's eyes glinted. "That makes you dangerous. Not because of your strength or technology, but because you think like predators, even when you are the prey." They reached the colony's central plaza, where the memorial obelisk gleamed in the sunlight. Penny gestured toward the names etched into its surface. Every colonist present that day, 2012 lives. Z-Turk tilted his head, but there was no battle. "You evacuated. The evacuation was the battle. Every colonist who survived was a victory. Every building wired to self-destruct was a weapon deployed." Realization dawned across his alien features. "Your strategy was never to win by fighting. It was to make victory too costly for the attacker." "Now you understand," Penny said with a grim smile. "Humanity's first rule of war. If we can't win, we make sure you lose too." 2 days later, the Dravation delegation departed aboard their shuttle. From the observation deck, Director Takahashi and Penny watched the vessel ascend. "Do you think they'll honor the treaty?" Penny asked. "They'd be fools not to," Takahashi replied. "Their intelligence on us was incomplete before. Now they understand what they're dealing with." "And what's that exactly?" Takahashi smiled faintly. "A species that lost its natural weapons long ago and compensated by becoming very, very good at making artificial ones. A species that turned weakness into psychological strength." Tommy Okono approached with a datapad. "Earth Command has approved the treaty. The neutral zone will be established at the agreed coordinates. Expansion plans are also moving forward. 3 new colonies within a year." The officer nodded. "The Council will be very interested in your report." "A new power has entered the game," Liz Vaden said. "One that compensates for fragility with strategy and psychological warfare. For the first time in generations, the balance has shifted." The ether ship slipped back into the void, carrying word of humanity's 7-minute stand. The ripples had only just begun to spread. On Phoenix Hope, unaware of new watchers, humanity carried on, building, researching, adapting. For in the vast darkness they had learned a timeless truth. Sometimes survival is not about strength or superiority, but about being too costly to challenge. The weakest colony had become the strongest message. In 7 minutes and 12 seconds, humanity had spoken in a language every species understood. The language of survival at any cost. Weeks after the treaty was signed at Phoenix Hope, the galaxy had already begun to shift. What was supposed to be a minor colonial skirmish had turned into a story whispered across spacefaring civilizations. For the Dravation Empire, the defeat was a wound too deep to ignore. Entire legions had been annihilated not by superior firepower, but by a species they had dismissed as prey. High Command ordered a complete reevaluation of their military doctrine. Yet whispers of doubt spread faster than their directives. For the first time in 3 centuries, the Empire's fleets moved with hesitation. But it was not only the Dravations who had taken notice. Far beyond their territory, the Ether Confederation convened in a crystalline chamber orbiting a gas giant. Captain Liz Vaden stood before the Council, presenting her findings on humanity. "They do not think like other species," she warned. "Their history is one of internal war, of survival against themselves. This has made them unpredictable, adaptive, and disturbingly willing to sacrifice everything for victory. They weaponize psychology as effectively as plasma cannons." The counselors exchanged uneasy gestures. One asked, "Are they a threat to the Confederation?" Phaedon shook her head. Not yet. They are too young, too scattered. But their doctrine, what they call Protocol Zero, is spreading to every new colony. Within a generation, any attempt to subjugate them may be too costly to contemplate. Meanwhile, aboard Phoenix Hope, life resumed with deceptive normalcy. Children played under artificial skies. Scientists worked in research domes, and engineers prepared the next wave of expansion. But beneath the surface, Earth Command was already testing refinements to Protocol Zero, automated evacuation systems, faster self-destruct sequences, and colony designs intended to turn entire planets into traps. Penny watched the preparations with unease. "We're building our homes like weapons," she said to Director Takahashi one evening. Takahashi's expression was unreadable. "We are building our homes to survive. The galaxy has seen our warning. Now we must decide what comes after survival." Unknown to them, beyond the neutral zone, an ancient civilization stirred. Hidden deep within nebulae, the Sillery had observed the rise and fall of empires for millennia. Where others saw chaos, they saw patterns. Where others saw war, they saw opportunity. Their seers whispered of humanity, the fragile creatures who turned weakness into fire. They spoke of a race that could unbalance the galaxy not through strength, but through the threat of loss itself. For the Sillery, it was not fear that guided them, but curiosity. And curiosity, in their long history, had always been followed by intervention. As Phoenix Hope expanded, as treaties were signed, as fleets repositioned across the stars, the Sillery prepared to make their first move. Humanity had announced itself to the galaxy in 7 minutes. Now the galaxy would begin to answer.